Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Celtic Unrestricted View podcast. My name is Ryan Clifford. Well, today there's big news in Glasgow regarding 3 new signings for Celtic from Japan, the J League. As that has happened, we have got a special guest on the podcast for us for this episode, speaking about Ange, the new signings, and he's actually a sports journalist from Japan. It's Dan Orolowitz. Dan, glad to have you on. I know you're a busy man. How's things, mate?
Things are good. An early Happy New Year to you and to everyone listening. It's funny, I'm actually still on holiday. I'm visiting my family in the States right now. So this is the blurry background of my childhood bedroom, which is not really great for recording. And I don't have my good podcast microphone and all that stuff that I have back home. But there's no better time than the present for news, is there? And this is massive. This is a huge deal for Celtic, for Japanese football, for all of us who follow it and cover it. So I'm happy. I'm happy, and I hope all the Celtic fans are happy.
As you say, you're on holiday, and I know you work for the Japanese Times and the sport kind of Times over there. Is that something you've done quite a long time, or has it been kind of new?
So I came to Japan first as a student in 2004, 2005, and then I moved there permanently at the end of 2006. I started going to J League games in 2007 just as a fan, went to FC Tokyo games, stood behind the goal, made flags, started a blog, and there was a community there. And there's a number of us who have followed Japanese football and covered it and tried to just really bring exposure to the rest of the world, because we all believe it's an amazing league, amazing culture, great match day experiences, and in terms of the quality of the football, among top 10, 15 in the world. And that is an argument that I take seriously and that I will defend. I started writing professionally, and I guess around 2008-ish was when I first started. I worked for goal.com from 2011, a few Japanese websites, digital, online portals. And then I joined the Japan Times in 2018. So it's been about 3.5 years that I've been working there.
Is that something you've always had a passion for? Is journalism in sports, or is it something that just happened overnight?
Growing up in Philadelphia, you're a sports fan. I mean, it's a 4-for-4 city. Now it's a 5-for-5 city. I played football as a kid. I was an every 4-year World Cup watching fan, because that was all we got on TV. And I really fell in love with the club game in Japan. And so as an American with that background, following Japanese football, I mean, I'll be the first to admit that my perspective is very unique among everyone. But we have an amazing community in Japan, lots of different perspectives, and that makes for a really cool community. And I was always involved in media, writing for school newspapers, and I thought that my career was going to be more on the video side, TV, film, video editing, that sort of thing. So if I look back on it, I sort of ended up here for a reason, but it's still sort of weird. And I'm just sort of happy to be on for the ride. I'm very lucky to be doing something that I enjoy doing for a living.
And I'm guessing, obviously, with the news today regarding Celtic, and I know the last few weeks and months there's been a lot of rumours and about Ange and obviously players. I'm guessing today's been a busy day for you regarding the news.
Yeah, I woke up, checked my phone. My mentions on Twitter were on fire. And that usually means that either something good has happened or I tweeted something stupid the previous night and I'm paying for it. Unfortunately, this time it was the first one. And yeah, huge. I did BBC Scotland Radio. I did Sky. I'm talking to you now. I've got another 1 or 2 Celtic fan podcasts lined up over the next couple of days. And I just I've made a lot of friends over the course of the last 6 months. And I tell people, listen, I'm happy to go on, but I'm flying back to Japan on Wednesday. I've got quarantine and all that chaos to deal with. So I'm just telling people, listen, line me up now,
Right.
or forever hold your peace. But it's fun, and I think it's just really any chance that I get to talk about Japanese football and to be able to teach people about all the cool stuff that we have and all the potential that's there. And that's what, when news like this happens, I get a chance to do that, and hopefully the players get it done on the pitch, and then more Scottish fans will see, well, the J League does have amazing players, and they'll start to watch, and that relationship continues.
I think that's the thing as well. Obviously, the news obviously broke in Glasgow about Ange's first coming. Obviously, we knew about him from managing Australia, but didn't actually know much of him about more than that. Me personally, I had to do a lot of research on him to know about his football, and I didn't actually know he was in Japan until obviously Eddie Howe didn't go to Celtic, and then obviously Ange came up. But obviously the news in Glasgow about him coming in and Kyogo coming in, and now these players come in, it's massive news. How is it in Japan with obviously Ange coming and these three guys coming and Kyogo? Was that big news in Japan?
Ange was huge. Ange and Kyogo coming over were among the most important football-related stories of the year. The reaction to the three finally signing, it's going to take a day or two, because it happened at, excuse me, it happened at the worst time of year, which is 8 p.m. on New Year's Eve. If you want to get the attention of the Japanese market, it's a horrible time of year to do it. The New Year's holiday is very important in Japan. It's not a party holiday. It is a spend time with your family at home holiday. People are watching Ryzen, the MMA promoter. They always do a big New Year's Eve event. People are watching Kohaku, it's a singing it's like a song contest that NHK, our national broadcaster, runs every New Year's Eve. Huge deal, millions and millions and millions of people watching. So in that sense, horrible timing. And my understanding is that they were trying to get it done the day before. I guess it would have been Thursday the 30th. Didn't work out. We got this. If they hadn't done it today, they probably would have had to wait until Monday, January 3rd, which is when Japan will start to reopen in terms of New Year business. But it's massive. I think you have a combination of the fact that it's three players, the fact that it is one of the biggest clubs in Europe in terms of reputation in Japan and the history. It's not three players going to St. Troiden in Belgium, which happens because they're owned by a Japanese company.
Right, okay.
And they've become sort of a clearinghouse for Japanese players who are taking the step to Europe. But it's Celtic. It's massive. There is the media attention that surrounds the club. And when there's media attention in the rest of the world, it's a big deal in Japan. So all these things are feeding in, and plus the fact that you have players from three of the better supported clubs in the J League. Maeda is arguably one of the most charismatic Japanese players in the J League. Yokohama F. Marinos fans are incredibly loyal. You have Kawasaki Frontale fans are incredibly loyal, just really passionate. And so the fact that Hatate is going in there will resonate with them. And Ideguchi with Gamba, it's the same thing. I mean, all of the unique thing about Japanese fans is that the attachment isn't just to the badge, where I feel like that's sort of what it is in Europe a lot of the time, where it's the badge above everything. But here it's also about the players.
Yeah. And
so you are going to have fans. They're not going to give up their clubs, but they are going to follow their favorite players wherever they go. And so now the question is, when are we going to get the Celtic Yokohama friendly? Might not happen until next year, until 2023, I should say. But whenever Celtic are ready to come to Japan, it's going to be the easiest tour they've done. Just an instant sellout, and it's going to be amazing. And knock on wood that everyone is still around when it happens. So it's going to be big news, but I mean, I say all that, and I'm sure I've just set expectations very high, but it is in a way no longer big news if a player goes over there. Mm-hmm. It's not about the press conference and holding up the scarf. It's not about getting the uniform and posing on the pitch. It's about whether or not they can play, because we have something like 50 or 60 Japanese players in Europe in the top leagues playing first division minutes for their clubs. So the question is, will they go over there and be like Furuhashi? Or are they going to be on the bench and struggle for minutes? Mm-hmm. So, in that sense, expectations are higher. But if they do perform as well as Furuhashi does, I mean, it's just going to be Furuhashi plus, multiplied, mm-hmm. compounded. It's going to be insane.
Because obviously, Kyogo is obviously here now, and the impact he's had, but obviously Hatate, Maeda, and Ideguchi, if that's the names correctly.
You're pretty good. You're doing.
So that's, I know from Glasgow, so my accent to try to get the names. But obviously that's the 3 guys that were signed for Celtic. Obviously, when did you actually hear about Kyogo coming first? Was that quite? Because to us in Glasgow, it was all of a sudden. It was quite like. We didn't really hear a lot of rumours about it. Well, me personally, it just kind of came within 2 or 3 days and he was signed. It was the exact same situation as Abada, who signed from Israel. It was just out of the blue. Because sometimes in Glasgow you hear from the papers, maybe weeks in advance or wee rumours. But with Kyogo and obviously the 3 guys that were signed from Japan, it was only really the rumours for kind of Twitter started and then it was in the papers. But it's never really been concrete until really the last few days. But when did you hear about their transfers actually coming to actually get the ball rolling?
So Kyogo was good business. Kyogo was good business because Celtic and Vissel Kobe kept their mouths shut. We did not know it was coming until we woke up and it was announced. One of the cleanest transfers I have seen. Just amazing for them to keep that under wraps. And one of the reasons it struck us by surprise is that we didn't think Kyogo was the target. The expectation was that Daizen Maeda was going to be at the top of Ange's list. And as it turns out, he was near the top of Ange's list, which is fair. I think that him picking Kyogo over Maeda is a fair call. But we didn't, we expected that first he's going to go to the players that he knows intimately and that he's worked with closely. There has been speculation about Maeda since the summer. There was speculation about Hatate since the Tokyo Olympics. Ideguchi sort of came out of nowhere in the fall. I guess it was around November or so when his name first started popping up. And that was weird. And I've said it, I've tweeted it tons of times. I've said it elsewhere. It is still weird because he is, from what I've taught, from the opinions I've heard from Celtic fans, from other journalists, from analysts I know, in a way, he is sort of the most suited to what it seems Celtic need in terms of that sort of deep-lying midfielder, is sort of a defensive presence who can also contribute to the attack. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, he isn't the player that he was in 2016 when he was the league's best young player, in 2017 when he was in the best 11. He got that injury in Germany and he sort of hasn't quite gotten back to that level. And as I've described, I mean, I was pitch side doing photography in, I think it was a World Cup qualifier, Japan, Australia, and he scored this rocket that put the game away. It had to have been 20, 30 meters out, just out of nowhere. Just look up the goal. I'm sure it's on YouTube or somewhere. But at the time, he seemed like, if not a lock, a very good possibility to represent Japan and Russia. And he did the Leeds move and went on loan and went on another loan and got it. It just didn't work out for him. And clearly Ange sees something there. If Ange can get what's there out of Ideguchi, this will be a very good move. If he can't, then it's a 1 million euro flop. But I think that expectations are high, because I think with Celtic fans, the expectation for any transfer is that they're supposed to be a success. And the reason that I've been more measured in my estimation of Ideguchi isn't that I think he's a bad player. I just think he hasn't been playing at his potential for a lot of reasons. But it is a trust in Ange signing. If you believe that Ange knows what he's doing, then you give him the chance to see how this works. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and they can ship him back to Gamba or sell him off to somewhere in Europe, where he still might be serviceable. But in the end, despite the injury, despite his struggles in Europe, despite the form, he's only 25. That is sort of older in Europe, but he can't, there's plenty of time left for him to go into the prime of his career. So, I'm more excited about what Maeda will bring immediately and what Hatate will bring eventually. And Ideguchi is still sort of the mystery. And so we'll see how that goes.
Because I know a lot of fans, well, especially in Glasgow and Scotland, they kind of look at what players have done in the past, and if they haven't really done well in the past, they've not got that perception right away of they'll come and do well. It's always, well, they didn't do well in the past, why are we signing them? And I know Ideguchi went to Leeds, didn't really play much. So fans might look at that and go, why are we signing somebody that didn't play back in 2-3 years ago down south? Why is he going to come here and be successful? But I'm similar to what you're saying. I think that Celtic fans have no reason not to trust Ange at the moment. At the moment, he's doing quite well. We are behind in the league, but considering the start we had and the rebuild he had to come in, he's actually done really well getting the first cup in the country as well. So I think that is, like you say, for me personally and some fans, we've no doubt not to trust Ange's signings. So these 3 signings at the moment, we are going to think they're going to be successful because we've no reason not to think they won't be.
This is a case where Ange is looking at a block of marble and he sees an elephant. I don't see the elephant. I'm not sure if I see the elephant, but if Ange says he sees it, I'm going to let him chip away at it and see what he comes up with. So we'll see how it goes. Even honestly, even if Ideguchi doesn't live up to whatever expectations are set for him, if Maeda and Hatate do, you're still way ahead of the game. And if Ideguchi does, if one of the 3 succeeds, you're still ahead of the game. If all 3 succeed, it's going to be insane, wild. So I think that the winter transfer window is always a tough time for Japanese players to come in. It's always a bit more rushed. It's the weather is not great. You've got clubs that are usually signing players to fill specific needs. Winter moves are not usually done from a position of strength. And I think that in this case, it is a little different because they've gotten the business done quickly, announced before the new year. And hopefully they will have time to integrate and time to fit in and time to get to know their squads. I don't know what the situation will be with Maeda and Hatate in terms of the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. I don't know if they're going to get called up or not. That's all between the JFA and Celtic, and I have no knowledge of what's happening. I'm sure Furuhashi is going to get called up, but it may be that the JFA says, listen, we're calling up Furuhashi and we're leaving those 2 because we want them fit into the team and we'll see them in March. That might be the bargain. So we'll see. But I'm optimistic. I'm upbeat, and there's no reason why Celtic fans should be upbeat.
Because as you say, obviously there's a lot of expectation for Celtic because we are a big name in the world, and obviously as fans we expect whatever player comes to Glasgow, they're going to be good. No matter how much we pay for them, we expect them to be good because to play at Celtic, we feel we've got to have a certain character, a certain mentality, a certain kind of player to come and play with Celtic. Do you think they kind of suit the Celtic way of playing?
Um, I think Maeda is going to get along really well. He is a character. He is um not a bad boy. Like none of them are like they might sort of have the sort of like in Japan we'd say it's sort of like a wild image, and there's really no easy way to translate and contextualize that. But like you've seen how Maeda looks like, bald by choice. He is humble, but charismatic in a way that honestly more J League players can learn from. I think the fans are going to love him. In terms of sort of comparing him to other Japanese players, what I've said is talk to your friends who support Inter Milan about how Yuto Nagatomo got on when he arrived, and how he became, he's got this little 5'7" Japanese left back who became like one of the darlings of the locker room because of his personality and because of the charisma. He really took to learning the language, and he really fit in and became a fan favorite there. And I would expect Maeda to sort of have the same character, the same personality. I think he'll get on well. Hatate is not when I say not as charismatic, like he's just sort of a normal Japanese player, humble, hardworking. I think he's used to playing in an environment where the fans love him and adore him, as all Kawasaki fans love and adore their players. I'm very interested to see how his character and how his personality evolves at Celtic. Ideguchi was, a bit, again, sort of tending towards Maeda in terms of having a bit more personality, a bit more charisma. And I think that hopefully having all four of them together will help them all sort of settle. And I think that you'll see some personality flashes from Ideguchi. He's going to play hard. I think that the first insane tackle he makes, the first opposing player he takes out, the fans are going to be fully behind him. Maeda is a daredevil. He was meant to sort of have his photo bootlegged and put onto a t-shirt like that's the highest compliment I can give him. So I think that in terms of the variety of players, in terms of the personalities, they all have the potential to fit in well, and hopefully they're welcomed by everyone in the club and by their teammates and by the fans.
Because that's interesting to say that's the way they are. Like they're very involved in the team and stuff, because obviously we've got Kyogo and he's like the darling of the Celtic fans already. We've really kind of got to him and the way he plays, and he's very nice as well and respectful, and I think that's the way the Japanese culture is it not? They're very respectful and they're very helpful, and they try and do their best for their club and their teammates.
Yeah, it's there are very few egos in the in the J League. That's sort of left to the foreign players. Will sometimes have egos, but even they understand that in order to succeed in Japan, you do have to be a team player. It is not about what you do; it is about what everyone does. And I think actually I posted this a day or two ago. Maeda was a commentator on a special about the high school national tournament, and it was like a recap of the top 20 goals in the prefectural qualifiers. And he talked about how high school football was where he learned the importance of his teammates, and the importance of playing for them, and the importance of riding and dying for them. And that's the mentality that I think most Japanese players have. And that has, in a way, that is almost a deficit for us, because Japan, especially at the national team level, we have sort of lacked the player who can carry the team on his shoulders and go. Like, we don't have Messi's. We don't have Ronaldo's.
Yeah.
We don't have Neymar's. We have players who play for each other, who win together and lose together. And the hope is that eventually, after we've sent dozens and dozens of players to Europe, one of them is going to sort of emerge from his shell and go into beast mode and become the kind of player who can carry the team at a World Cup and just break through 5 defenders by himself and score. Could be Kyogo, could be Maeda. We'll see. A bit too early to tell. But I think that they are going to learn the pressure. There's no bigger pressure cooker right now than Celtic Park. I think that the expectations that are on them because of what Kyogo has done will be massive. And now it's up to them to deliver. And if they can't, then, what are we doing?
So I think as well, obviously, the expectation from Celtic fans this year is we have to win the league because of the Champions League money. So but they won't have really time to kind of settle, and normally you might go to lesser teams and you might get a few months to settle in, and if you don't really play well, you might get allowed a few weeks off. But in Glasgow, and the way we are, if they don't hit it off right away, the fans, they shouldn't get on their back, but they might get on their back if they're not playing well. But you've got to think as well, they're coming from a foreign country, they need to settle in. Do you think they've got the mentality and character to maybe ignore that and just continue their game, if that was to happen?
If they were to not sort of perform.
Yeah.
I mean, it's... I think that, I'm very curious to see how things go in the first couple of weeks. There, I'm not, I don't recall exactly when the schedule resumes, because I know that there have been some issues with the league scheduling, and hopefully they do have time to get settled in and figure things out. And I think that I think that they all have to adjust to their roles, and what matters, what the players are going to have to keep in their heads above all else is that it doesn't matter what the fans think. And I'm not saying that as an insult to the fans. What matters most to them is what Ange thinks.
Yeah, it's true.
They have to... Maeda knows, and I'm pretty sure Hatate and Ideguchi know, Ange is the boss. That's what Maeda, said in his comments to the Marinos website. I'm going to visit the boss. And as long as they are meeting his expectations, things will work out for them. And if that means that they're playing, if that means that they're coming off the bench, if that means that they're not selected for the 18, it's their job to not just accept that, but then to meet whatever expectations the boss has. So they're not playing for the crowd. They're the crowd that they're playing for is one guy, and if they can meet his expectations, they will get their chance. Obviously, Ange is under a ton of pressure, but that's the fishbowl. That's just what it is. And I think that it is a sign in how the board realizes at this point, either Ange is going to succeed or he isn't. But whatever happens, he's going to do it his way. And clearly, by letting him sign 3 players from one league, which is insane. I can't remember if I said that earlier. This is insane on paper. If you had told me 6 months ago that Ange Postecoglou would move to Celtic and bring 4 J-Leaguers along with him, I'd say you've lost your mind. But yet here we are. But he'd rather win playing his way, but he'd rather struggle and grind and work to get the results his way than not play the style that he wants to play. And I think these players, he thinks that these players are going to let him play the kind of football that he wants to play and deliver more trophies. So that's where we're at. I hope I've answered the question.
No, that's right, because I was actually going to ask you, has that ever happened before, like 3 or 4 players coming from the one team or the one division to a foreign club? And obviously it's not, because by your thoughts, you're quite surprised by it.
Well, again, I brought up St. Troiden in Belgium, and they're in a unique situation. And right now, I'm looking it up. They have 3 Japanese players right now, or excuse me, 4: Ko Matsubara, Daiki Hashioka, Daniel Schmidt, and Tatsuya Ito, and excuse me, 5, because I think Taichi Hara is there. So that's a weird situation. But you'll get 1 or 2. You'll get 2 players occasionally. Bundesliga clubs in Germany, clubs in Belgium. They know what's up with Japanese players, and so you'll have 2 or 3 Japanese players at a single German club. You might have 1 or 2, in Portugal, 1 or 2 in Belgium. But for such a high-profile club to sign so many in one fell swoop, and these aren't exactly like bench players. These are all players who are being signed with the intention that some, if not all of them, are going to be starters. I don't think that's ever happened before.
As interesting as well for us. We didn't expect maybe 3 or 4 to come for Japan, but we did. Obviously we thought maybe 1 with Kyogo, and then obviously there's rumours about the 3. But is there, including Ange, is a reputation in Japan? Is the 3 players and Ange's reputation really, really big in Japan? Because obviously we don't really know much about their reputations back here, because we don't really get to see Japanese football and stuff. But is the reputations of the 3 players big expectations to come over and do well here?
I think that with Maeda and Hatate, I mean, Maeda had already been to Portugal for a year, and the expectation was that he was always going to go back eventually. With Hatate, again, you look at how he did for Kawasaki last year, you look at how he did for them this year, how he performed at the Olympics. It was never a question of if, but when. Ideguchi, again, I feel like I'm being unfair to him because I have to keep going back and saying but Ideguchi, and that's just the circumstances. I think that he deserves a chance at redemption, and this is his chance at redemption. And it's weird. I'm not going to pretend it's not weird, but we're going to go with it, and hopefully he delivers. But as far as Maeda and Hatate are concerned, if they live up to their potential, both are future national team regulars, if not stars. And Maeda especially, Hatate probably, alongside Kyogo. I mean, you could have a situation where maybe two of them go to the World Cup. I don't know if we'll get to 3. I don't want to, jinx anything. But I think that Kyogo should absolutely go to Qatar if Japan qualifies. And I think that if Maeda keeps up with Celtic as he's done at Marinos this season, he should absolutely be on that plane. And Hatate, he's an interesting role player that if he shows his versatility under Ange, as he has, at Kawasaki, I think that if you're Hajime Moriyasu and if you're picking your final 23, you want that wild card who can sort of pitch into anything. So they've all got good chances, and again, this is a chance for Yosuke Ideguchi to really sort of rewrite his career, and have that stepping stone, if not to the national team, then at least to a successful career in Europe.
And obviously, as you mentioned, Ideguchi, we are at Celtic, I would say, we are kind of crying out for that type of midfielder. We've got obviously McGregor, Turnbull and Rogic. They're the ones playing most weeks with Beaton, but obviously on the bench we've got McCarthy and Sorrell. They dip in and out. McCarthy's played a wee bit. Sorrell kind of seems a bit an outcast, and it looks like he might go away in January or the summer. So we do kind of need somebody to come in with a bit of quality and play there. What exactly would Celtic be getting with Ideguchi, and what would they bring to Celtic?
I mean, they're getting. He is very good at defensive pressuring. I mean, he is going to be, again, sort of that central midfield. I think that the 6 is the number I'm thinking of, and he can push up, he can pressure opponents, he can force turnovers, and does very well with distributing the ball. When he gets involved in the attack, again, he's not going to be your primary weapon, but he will be a weapon. And again, I just keep thinking maybe that 2017 goal against Australia, maybe that's just the one that's been playing in Ange's head over and over again. Because if you look up that goal, you'll see that, you know, this is a player who can play really well defensively and occasionally deliver, you know, just absolute thunder strikes like that. You've got something special. So I think that he's also, you know, there's a question, and I've talked to a couple people who wonder, well, since the injury, has he been maybe a bit more afraid, a bit less confident, a bit more afraid of going, you know, headfirst into those tackles? Does he have what it takes? But if he's committing to this move, I think that he's ready to test himself. Again, as I've said, I feel bad that he is a question mark. I think Ideguchi is a question mark, Hatate is a period, and Maeda is an exclamation point. That's sort of where I'm at with each of those three. So I'm very curious to see how Ideguchi will get on. But if Ange sees it, then I'm willing to go along with it.
And then obviously the second player you mentioned, Hatate. Again, I know he can play various positions. What is his? I know he's played a left back a few games for the season there, but what's his main position? Again, what would he bring to Celtic? And obviously, he's quality as a player.
Just crafty, technical. The ball is just glued to his feet. You know, as a defender, he's a bit, I wouldn't say poor as a defender, but, you know, he does get into foul trouble. I think that's just more how he was played out, a little out of position at left back, if anything. I've described him as a bit of a chameleon. Celtic announced him as a utility player, which is a bit like unfair to him. You know, like he started the season at left back, moved up to sort of a wing back central midfield position, and he made the league's best 11 as a forward, which is what he's registered as. So what he's bringing is, I mean, whatever Ange wants him to play, except, you know, he's not going to put on the gloves and, you know, be a goalkeeper. But he'll be a presence on the left side and help create plays and you know, him just imagining the line of like Ideguchi to Hatate to Maeda or Kyogo. I mean, what else is there to say? Like that's there's such amazing potential there.
Because obviously at the moment we've got Kyogo, Abada, and Jota. I know Kyogo's mainly been playing up front, but with Jota and Abada as well, you've still got James Forrest coming in. So there's a lot of attacking options at the club already, but obviously through injury, we've got Jackie Marcus been injured, Ayeti's injured. But you bring in, obviously, by the looks of it, by what I've heard from you and other outlets on Twitter and stuff, that Maeda seems to be a quite special player coming to Celtic.
Yeah, he's a bulldog. He's a daredevil. He will just go in that beautiful bald head of his and try to score however he can. He is tenacious. He's just had such an explosive season for Marinos this year after what was a very disappointing 2020 campaign. And that said, I mean, I haven't mentioned it. I don't think I brought it up yet, but I don't really count anything that happened in 2020. Let's get this. It was a weird season for a lot of reasons, you know, for you guys, for us, for everyone. So if a player has an off year, I'm not really gonna personally factor that in as much, and that may not sit well with some people, but that's where I'm coming from. He, you know, is especially on a Marino side that has so many talented attackers, Marcos Jr., who's sort of the other token bald striker who just scores from everywhere. I think Maeda, you know, we were disappointed not to see him get more playing time at the Olympics, because we did want to see him just see what he could do. And that's Moriyasu fault, but we won't get into that. I think, again, just his character, his aggression, his tactical awareness, and the fact that he is always focused on getting that goal, will serve him very well. And I think that he's going to be a hit.
But I think as well the fact that we brought them in, because at Celtic we've been quite critical as a fan base about we don't get deals done quick enough sometimes. The board leave deals to the last day of the window and they drag on. But it seems to be, as Maeda calls him, the boss. It seems to be he is the boss at Celtic as it stands. We don't know if previous managers have been under influence for the board, but it seems to be that Ange's, whatever Ange says, Ange gets. When it looks at, that's what it's the way it seems in Glasgow. So if he's brought these guys in, he's obviously getting, as you said, he's a boss, and Maeda's obviously respectful of him, and he's come here to play for him. So the fact that he's coming to actually play for him, for me, that's a token in itself that he's coming to play for the manager, because he'll give his all on the park, if that makes sense.
I think that any J League player who faced Ange when he was in charge of Marinos would be honored to play under him. I think you've seen that with Kyogo. Obviously, Maeda and the other players at Yokohama just love and respect him. Hatate and Ideguchi surely feel the same way. I mean, if Ange had won his second title at Marinos, they would have built a statue for him outside Nissan Stadium. They may yet build a statue for him outside Celtic Park if he pulls this year off. Maybe too early to say, but he is certainly one of the most respected managers to have come through the J League over the last decade. Just the way that he always believed in what he was doing, even through that first year in the 2018 season, which was rough. When you're winning 4-0 one week and losing 5-4 the next, like, that was Ange ball. And I think that the fact that he stuck through it, the board backed him, they gave him the signings he needed over the offseason to help shore up the defense and to play the kind of football that he wanted to play. And it paid off, and they won their first title in 15 years. Or I should say their first league title in 15 years. So, if you're the Celtic board, I think you're looking at what Kyogo has done, is continuing to do. And if you don't want more of that, then you really don't deserve to win the Premiership. Let's be honest. Like, either you're going to catch up to Rangers or you're not. But if you want to, you got to give the man whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And he'll succeed or he'll fail on his merits. So, it's definitely reassuring to see that the board has come around. I know there were a couple other Japanese players that they were going after during the summer window that didn't quite work. I think Koi Takura was sort of the big loss when he went to Schalke on loan, I think. Might be a loan, might be a full transfer. I don't quite remember. I'm on a holiday, it doesn't matter. But no, seriously. And I think that the more success that Ange has with Japanese players at Celtic, and especially if Kyogo, if Maeda, if Hatate, if Ideguchi use Celtic as a stepping stone to, say, go to the Premier League, which is still sort of, in many ways, the end goal of that's sort of the final boss. If that happens, then you're going to see more players say, hey, no, we want to go play for Ange.
Yeah.
And so Celtic are in a very good position if that continues to work. And if you create that pipeline, if you foster that pipeline, it's going to pay dividends for years to come, as we've seen in Europe, as elsewhere in Europe, in Germany and Belgium, because the clubs that form those relationships with Japanese clubs, with agents, with intermediaries, they have access to a market that not every club does.
It's quite, actually, it's interesting that you say as well that you kind of forget about obviously 2020. He at Celtic Park, we really forget about that. Obviously going for the Magic 10 that we obviously hoped for, and it didn't happen. But there was a lot of reasons why back here we think it didn't happen. And like you say, if Celtic want to catch Rangers again, get back on top, but we have been for the last 8 to 9 years. It's you've got to trust the manager and the board. By the looks of it, have backed the manager, because I think, don't quote me, but you actually might know more than me, but it's roughly about £5 million roughly between the three of them. Is that roughly what it's costing, roughly?
Something like that, 5 or 5 point. I mean, you're getting a bargain. Ideguchi, I think, is a fair price for the market, maybe even a bit high, but I think that they set the standard with Kyogo. And once people see how much you've paid for Kyogo, then they're going to ask, they know that there's more in the wallet. Maeda and Hatate, I think you're underpaying for. I really do hope that Marinos and Frontale both have sell-on agreements in place, because if not, then that's their loss. Because I can see either of those players, a couple great seasons, and it's like when Minamino went from Salzburg to Liverpool, and you're talking like 15 million euros, something like that. Absolutely potential there. For good business to be had, and of course the commercial business that comes with having 4 great Japanese players in the squad. I'm writing a story for the paper for next week, and I'm getting into there are commercial deals to be found. There's going to be sponsors. The Celtic Japan Twitter account has 37,000 followers in 5 months. That's really good. It's a lot. That's the 9th most in Europe, in the world, actually, for clubs with Japanese language accounts.
That's interesting.
And all of that, most of that, I'd say the first 34,000 or so, was on the back of Ange and Kyogo. And now you've gotten 2,000 or 3,000 more in the last 12 hours, not even, just because of Maeda, Hatate, and Ideguchi. So imagine what happens when they start playing and they start scoring. Sky's the limit.
It's a high commercial, the value as well. It's obviously we had Nakamura and Koki Mizuru a few years ago, and again that brought a lot of attention. Obviously Nakamura was a superstar for Celtic, and he's still adored. I think Kyogo's going that way as well. I think no matter what else Kyogo does, I think he will be a fan's favourite, because you can just see he gives everything in the park. He's very, very talented. I know he can play out wide, but I think he's better through the middle. I think that's the just what we get here. But I definitely agree that the commercial side of it, I think Celtic will reap the rewards will be reaped by that big time.
And it's funny that you mentioned Nakamura, because they launched a Japanese website in January 2006. I believe, oh no, my light went out. I believe they were the first. I hope that this might be running low on battery. We'll see how that goes. But they were one of, if not the first clubs to have a Japanese language website. And now they've relaunched that. They've relaunched the Twitter. In 2023, if Ange and Maeda and maybe even Furuhashi are still around, that preseason tour is going to be bonkers. It's going to be insane. And I think that that the thing is, it isn't about selling shirts anymore. I think that there was sort of that question of, well, who's this Nakamura kid? He's played in Italy, but can he hack it? Can he hack it in the old firm? And it's like, that was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Now we're, dozens and dozens and dozens of Japanese players have come and go, and now it is about performing. So we'll see how things go. But if the players perform, sponsors, marketing, selling shirts, more Japanese players, preseason tours, it's all on the table. And the way that Celtic have committed themselves to sort of treating the Japanese market with respect, paying out these transfer fees instead of maybe going a bit cheap as some clubs elsewhere in Europe have done, does show that they care about the market and that they understand it. And hopefully they keep that going.
I think as well, the fact for us fans, the fact that the board are going out and spending a bit of money as well, because obviously, as you say, January can be a hard month for clubs to buy players in any country, never mind Japan. And the fact as well, I think the fact that us as fans, we've kind of spoke about how we need to try and get a bit more value for money, because we signed, before he came to us, Sparkas from Greece was very, very, very well regarded in Greece, played with Athens, 5.5 million we signed him for Athens. But we've just signed 3 players for that value. So in terms of value, for me, I'd rather get 3 players for that price than pay £5 million for a player that might not work out. But as you say, maybe only 1 or 2 might work. But the fact that you've got Kyogo already working already, if only 1 or 2 work out, you can kind of forgive the other one not working because you trust in what the manager does.
Exactly. Bargains, daylight robberies, grand thefts of the level that we have not seen since like the Ocean's 11 movies. Everyone should be. I know that Celtic fans often look for reasons to be upset with the board. You should be happy with the business that has been done. I'm happy that the moves are happening. I'm happy that the players are getting their chances. I do wish that the clubs got more money. I hope that we learn of sell-on agreements eventually, and there will still be solidarity payments for for all their clubs, for especially Hatate, who if I recall correctly, came up through. Actually, no, he was a Juntendo graduate, but he, I mean that's sort of the other thing is that the fact that we don't just have club systems, or club and academy systems, but we do have high schools and universities, and all of them are get a bit of the solidarity payments when Minamino goes to Liverpool, or if Kyogo ends up going to the Premier League, and that does help our system grow. And really, I think that's what everyone wants here. We just want the clubs to get their bag, to get the money that they need to invest in their academies and keep producing these players, and hopefully we get there.
And obviously, as you say, they're coming from Japan. So what is obviously in Scotland, the game is quite quick. Some teams don't let you kind of get the ball. It's aggressive. It's maybe quicker than some players realise. What is the standard comparing? Are they similar, or would you say maybe the J League's maybe underrated quite a lot?
It's maybe not as fast as in some European leagues, but the technical ability is very high. Defense can be a bit shaky depending on the club. I think that's sort of not, especially once you get down to the lower divisions. But Japan produces amazing midfielders and amazing attackers, and they are very entertaining and exciting games to watch. And one of the important points about our league that I like to tell people is that we go in really not knowing who's going to win. For the most part. I mean, granted, I say that in Kawasaki have won 4 of the last 5 seasons, but circumstances for a couple of those. I mean, we went into 2017 not knowing who would win the title. We went into 2020 not having a clue who would win the title. 2021 was sort of another pandemic season, and we all sort of knew that Kawasaki would end up on top. But in the past, I mean, it's so hard for a club to repeat. It's so hard to get 3 in a row, which I think only Kashima Antlers have done. It's so hard to defend because the level, if you're looking at the top 10 clubs in J1, the level is much closer than you would think. And even at the bottom, we had 4 teams getting relegated this season, and the relegation battle went on until the last round. I think the last round. And you look at the promotion fights in the J2, and you always have 10 teams who are locked in potential to go up. And it's amazing how close that race will get. So I wouldn't, if I'm comparing the Japanese game to the Scottish game, I'd like to say that there's maybe one or two teams that on a good day could be Celtic or Rangers. Mm-hmm. And probably 11 or 12 teams who could, on a decent day, probably beat any other team in the Premiership.
Yeah.
And even the bottom 6 teams are they've got a good chance. They've got like a 50-50 chance, and even then getting down into the J2. So I would never say, the J League is equal to, say, the Big Four, the Premier League, mm-hmm. Serie A, La Liga, whatever. But top 10, if you're comparing the overall level of play between the J League and, say, the Premiership, or Belgium, or the Netherlands, or Portugal, I don't think that it's a poor comparison. I think that Japan stands up pretty well on its own. And that's something, there's always lots of debate when I say that. I say, oh yeah, the J League's the top 10 league in the world. People say, no, you're full of shit. But like, really, like Greece, if you look at some of the tier 2 UEFA nations, Japan would be pretty well. I think, Japan, the J League teams would do very well in, say, the Europa League. And once in a while, you'd have someone who gets into the Champions League and impresses. Are we at the Champions League level? No. But, if you look at, say, the 2016 Club World Cup, Kashima Antlers took Real Madrid all the way to extra time in the final. We are capable of producing teams that can do that.
Yeah. So I think obviously, because we don't know much about the Japanese league, it's obviously good hearing from yourself, because obviously your knowledge is very, 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 very insightful. That is your job, and to obviously tell us about these type of players, because we don't really see them day in, day out. So it's been very, very interesting to listen to your insight, Dan. And again, I kind of hope that we get the way you're feeling, that they're going to succeed and do very well. And listen, again, let's be fair, as fans, we need to realise as well, these guys are coming here for a stepping stone. They're coming to do their best for us, but with that insight of getting a move, and that's only going to benefit us in the bank balance, because end of the day, Celtic, we are a bit of a selling club in a way. We need to sell when the players are hot, because we don't always get money from the Scottish League, don't really always qualify for Europe. So if you do get £15 million for Kyogo or Maeda, it's only going to help Celtic, and it's only going to get the profile of Celtic, I would say, back up to a European keel again.
Even now, if you go to Japan and you say that you're a Celtic fan, everyone's going to say, oh, Shinsuke Nakamura. Mm. But, that's the fact that even 15 years later, the Celtic brand has that attachment. Mm. That speaks volumes about the impact that Nakamura had. And he was only at the club for, I think, 5 seasons in total?
It was roughly.
Roughly. You would think from the attachment, from the affection that Japanese fans have for Celtic, that he spent his entire career there. And certainly we sort of wish he had. Might have done better if he'd stayed at Celtic instead of going to Espanyol, but that's neither here nor there. It is a stepping stone, but it's a stepping stone, but at the same time, it is that the Celtic name is still strong enough to attract these players.
Yeah.
So I think that it's sort of, it is a compliment and a testament to how much of a positive reputation Celtic has in Japan. You're not going to find a Rangers kit on sale unless you really look for it, and I can't even think about where it would be, but you will find plenty of Celtic kits these days. You are, especially, now you're going to find plenty of them in Kobe. You're certainly going to see them start popping up in Yokohama and in Kawasaki and in Osaka. it is a very unique club for a lot of reasons. But hopefully, if this works out for everyone, then Celtic will cement itself as Scotland's top club in Japan. It already is, but with a bullet. And we'll see how it goes.
I think as well the fact that even as a commercial point of view, even if they don't perform on the park, I think it's a win-win because they're going to get the publicity from that side as well. So obviously performing on the park and winning trophies and helping us score goals is going to be beneficial to us. But I think even without that, even just signing, it's going to get the profile of Celtic and obviously to be the prominent team in Scotland and in Japan. But again, Dan, really, really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. We're a Celtic and everybody, all the outlets want to talk to you, mate. So I really do appreciate your time you speak to us, and I'm really grateful you're listening because it's been really insightful. Because I don't really know much about Japan and these players myself. So again, Dan, really, really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot and take care. And Happy New Year, Dan.
Yes, Happy New Year to you. Thank you for having me on. I do hope that, just as fans in June and July learned a lot about Ange and Kyogo and about the J League, I hope that you will all continue to learn about the J League through these players and get to know not only them, but the clubs they played for. We have an amazing culture here. Doesn't quite have the length of football in Scotland, but we're proud of it. We want nothing more than for it to succeed. And it's always fun when these sorts of cross-cultural ties come up because it gives us a chance to share our passion with you guys and for Celtic fans to share their passion with Japanese fans, especially the younger fans who may not be familiar with it. They may not get all the banter, but they appreciate the sentiment. And I think that they have really been taken with how well Kyogo has been treated by the club and by its fans. And so, I know that the Celtic supporters club in Tokyo has, I know they've got like 8,000 Twitter followers, some huge amount of Twitter followers. I can even check that as we wrap up here, but it's let's see, the number is 5,000, like 4,500. They'll get more. And you've got tens of thousands of new Celtic fans in Japan as of today. So I think that Japanese fans want nothing more than for these players to succeed. And as I've said numerous times, your success is our success for Asian football, for Japanese football. And hopefully it works out for all of us.
I think it's interesting that obviously it's the culture. For me, I think it's the culture of these players that are really respectful, and I think that's why the fans here respect them. They give their all. They're very nice, and you can just tell they're respectful, but they've got that side to them where they'll be a bit nasty on the park, but we know off the park that they'll be absolutely first class. And I think here as well at Celtic, as long as you play for that badge, you might not be the best of talented players, but if you play for the badge and you show up every Saturday or Wednesday, whatever it is, the fans here will love you. But again, Dan, really appreciate your time. Happy New Year. Take care and all the best. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Happy New Year to you too. Thanks again.